welcome to another exciting episode of the In-Game Boss Podcast, Oklahoma's most well-known and probably number one in Oklahoma, number one podcast for video games. And I am your host, Jeremy, a.k.a. your in-game boss, a.k.a. your retro activist, a.k.a. it is so hot. It is so hot.
How hot is it?
Thank you. I need some lemonade. Kind of makes you angry. One of those. And with me, over here, all the way across the neighborhood, in another part of the city, Jaron Williams.
A.k.a. Evil of Aku, a.k.a. Mr. I didn't find a problem with Last of Us Part 2, a.k.a. It's humid, it's hot, but it's going to get hotter this weekend.
Oh, you're not kidding. Okay, so here's the thing, man. If you haven't listened to our special interview with our game developers from Clever Games, they made a game on the mobile app called Blight Night. Check it out. It's on Google Play and App Store. We did a special interview with them. It was wonderful talking to them. They showered us with a lot of compliments, and I was like, heck yeah. So shout out to them. Shout out to Nick. Shout out to Allison that kind of helped us put it together like glue.
Oh yeah.
And check it out. It's a great interview. It's our first interview with a game developer. So I thought that was pretty awesome in our own state. So,
big ups. Thank you. Thank you very much, guys. Big ups again.
Yeah, let's see those hits coming. But we have a great episode for you because we have another guest. Now, he's not a game developer, but he's kind of like me a little bit where, like, this is the man behind the scenes with a lot of shows. Like, he has his hand in a lot of stuff. Like, if there was a cookie jar, he broke that jar. All right? So, it's time to bring our segment in, checking our guests. So, the way it works is we're going to kind of hype you up who this guy is. Are you ready, Jaron?
Oh, yeah. Check.
Okay. He's from Indiana.
Check.
And he hosts the network called Journey into the Comics.
Check. And
hold that thought for a second before I tell you to check again. He also did Journey into Wrestling, the OG 012, the Can of Culture, the Voice of Survival, and Gallup Radio. And there's another one, but I spelled it wrong. I'm going to have him bring that in for me. Now you can say check.
Check.
And he's the drummer to a band called Walk Among Us, not Wolf, Walk Among Us.
Check, check.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome in Nate Phillips. How you doing, Nate?
AKA the Podfather, as they call me. You guys had the AKA thing. I figured I would join in on the fun.
What else you got? What's your
yeah. AKA, the man, like you said it, the guy with his hand in all the cookie jars. I feel like if I stop to breathe, I will die. And that's the weirdest way to look at life. But I just try to always have something going on, keep busy, whether it's projects in my home, whether it's projects outside of my home, projects with my friends, all the podcasts that we run on the network. I don't host all the shows. There are like 14 or 15 different shows that we host on our network. I only host like 7 of them, but I do produce all 15 or whatever it is of them. So editing, mixing, mastering, uploading to our Podbean, trying my best to push it on social media. It's really, you guys know it best because you're in the podcasting game. Having a show is not like, oh, it's all simple. There's thousands of people that are just ready to listen to me. You have to like do the work.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it is doing the work. And like, I have a special fondness for graphic design. A lot of the imagery you see on the network, I created with the specific idea in my head of like, this is how we should look. This is what I want to present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting because you're the only other person so far that I met that produces a lot of show under one network, meaning that if they go into Journey into the Comics, all the shows are there in one place instead of searching here, and searching here. So that's really cool. Like, I thought I was the only one so far, and I was like, oh, okay, this guy does it too. And that's awesome because you were actually good friends with Brendan Stone, my homeboy that does the World Gaming Trade Show with me from his own podcast, the Game Addict Podcast. So it's really cool because he talks about you a lot. So, I was like, well, let me reach out to him and see if he wants to get on. And so I want to say thank you for making the time to come on this show.
Oh yes.
Always willing to guest on shows, man. I love it. It's podcasting is a medium where you can express yourself, and in a lot of ways you don't have to have a filter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can just kind of let your mind go, wander, say what you feel. One thing that just to briefly talk about Brandon and the network, in 2014 when I created Journey into Comics, it was this like kind of out of necessity thing, bands at a standstill, kind of my other band, not Walk Among Us, that comes later, but Brandon and I started podcasting very early in Journey into Comics history. It was like episode 5 or 6. He came on as a guest. I told him I really didn't want him to leave. I said we should just do this all the time. We went for like nearly 200 episodes together, and then he stepped away for a time. Episode 300 for Journey into Comics just dropped a few weeks ago. He just came back as a full-time host,
That's cool, though. That makes that number very special.
It is very special. And, of course, I've also got my amazing co-host, Tyler, who is a part of the network and has been involved in many different projects as well. Like I told you guys off air before we started, I'm really an open book, so I'm excited to see what thoughts and questions you have to throw my way on this show.
Yeah, we're excited too because you have a lot of shows, so there'll be probably a lot of questions to kind of give a better idea for the listeners to understand the structure and your ideas behind it. And so, but before we get into a little bit of the news, because this show is pretty jam-packed, we have a very special segment for y'all, but so much that we don't have time to do news at the end like we normally do, so we're going to do some news at the very beginning. But before I go into news, Nate, just for our listeners, can you just give me 3 games that you personally love?
Oh, man. Okay, easy. Let's talk about Final Fantasy VII OG. It's one of my all-time favorite games.
Okay.
Let's go into talking about Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. It's a highly underrated game from that series. Another one of my favorites.
Pause. Best one in the series to you?
Sure.
Best one in the series for you?
That's a struggle. That's a struggle because Guns of the Patriot is another game that I have a great love and affinity for, but it was totally different and removed from what Snake Eater even was. So it's kind of a toss-up. And then a third game, honestly, I'm going to throw a real curveball here because I am very fond of Borderlands.
Okay.
Borderlands, really?
Sure.
So you played the third one. I haven't touched it yet, but you played the third one, I'm guessing.
A little bit, yeah. I haven't gotten all the way through.
So what do you rank that so far? Is that the top? Is that in the middle? Is that the bottom?
See, let me tell you, I really struggle with a lot of game sequels. And to me, Bioshock 1 is, or not Bioshock, Borderlands 1, we were talking about Bioshock earlier, but Borderlands 1 is perfect in its own right. The way it looked, it was its own kind of innovative thing. An open world RPG that's similar to what you've already done in all kinds of other different games, but the elements were fun, different. It had a collector's aspect to it with all the different weaponry you could collect throughout the game. So thinking back, that's one that I really dig.
Okay. Awesome. So, Jaron, how are you doing, man?
I'm
doing
great.
Good? You doing
Yeah,
good?
man. I'm smelling ribs in the background.
Wait, you got ribs? You didn't tell me about it?
Yeah, we got. Well, no, then I have to share. No, we got some pork ribs, man.
Listeners, I want you to know that ribs is one of my favorite barbecue meals. Like, it's up there. Like, I love it.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It's under that is brisket, but ribs, it's worth in the teeth. I will pick the teeth because I love ribs so much.
I mean, yeah, my girl's even making barbecue sauce, like, own barbecue sauce at home.
You will save me a slab of something.
At this point, I've been going to the local butchers, at least once a month, maybe once every month and a half. So the slabs and cuts I've been getting have been quality. So
man, you're already ready for the summer. Nate, are you a barbecue person? Of course you are.
Oh yeah,
you got the beard of a man.
The show that you
likes barbecue.
The show that you left out that we do is foodies watching movies because I'm a huge foodie.
Yeah.
I love to cook. I'm a very, very well seasoned home chef that has a vast knowledge in the kitchen. I love cooking. I smell the barbecue in spirit all the way from Oklahoma. I smell it. I'm just like, oh, it's probably perfect.
Does Indiana is barbecue big in Indiana? Is that a thing?
It is. It's not like you don't have like Indiana style barbecuing, because it's just them ripping off every other state that does barbecuing right. But I call Interby in the South, but they're not quite there with their level of barbecuing. But Brandon is let me just tell you, if you don't know, Brandon is the barbecue master. He will. He smokes meat. He barbecues meat. He grills meat. He is 100% one of my favorite people to eat food from.
Maybe you should get him the name Super Meat Boy over there. See where that rolls.
Oh my God, it's done. Another game I absolutely adore, Super Meat Boy. Yes.
Yeah, you need to call him that from now on for, when he cooks the meat. And so, yeah. Nate, based on your video, man, I swear every person I had on video, they own a cat. It's meant to be. Everybody owns a cat.
This is, the listener can't see Mr. Biscuit, our Siamese cat.
Oh, okay.
He's a little over a year old, very inquisitive, crazy little monster, who's terrorizing my foot right now as we talk. Get out here.
All right, let's get into some news. News. There's a lot of stuff that happened, but we can only pick a few. There's a lot of stuff. Like, could we talk about, the games being $70? Yeah, but we don't have time for that.
Yeah,
but
people are going to buy it anyway.
Let's move on. There's a thing called sales. You can roll with it. All right. The problem is, it's just
should have happened last generation.
Yes, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think if we didn't have the pandemic, everybody would be like, okay, why not? And so, but one thing that's been going on is, of course, summertime, E3 doesn't exist. Summer gaming's popping up. Xbox had his thing. PlayStation had his thing. Xbox is trying to come back with something later on of the month of July. We'll talk about that in a second. But Ubisoft is coming up. But there's already, man, I don't know who works there, but somebody needs to fix the pipes because there's a lot of leak coming out over there, right?
Oh.
So with that, you heard about Far Cry, the new one, has been leaked, with an image and
today,
stuff. Yeah, so that's in talk. But they're supposed to announce on July 12th all this information. But one thing that did leak was Assassin's Creed Valhalla, a beta, basically. A beta image. And you got to see some gameplay, which you probably can't see it now because Ubisoft just went and wiped everything clean. I got a chance to put a video up. Hopefully some people got to see it. I got sat there and watched it about 30 minutes. And the first thing that comes to my head, and everybody's saying this, that it reminds you of Witcher 3. Like, hands down. Just the gameplay. Because when you're riding the horse, they even have it where the line is like directing where they go, and it reminds you a lot of The Witcher. Now, granted, they did also do that in Origins, but except this here, they made it really shout out Witcher. And even like the camera angles look like Witcher. But based on the beta, it was a woman. She she just finished battling somebody, and then you got to see her across the land, followed by a boat battle, followed by her taking over this castle. And they use equipment like using a ram, the bump, crash through the doors, followed by a boss fight and everything. It's cool. It's almost to the point when I see these games now is, why is this even called Assassin's Creed? You know what I mean? Like I get it, but at the same time, it's like it's not really assassins anymore. Really, it's more of like you're just this warrior that happens to fall into being an assassin, not part of a creed, not part of a guild. It's more like, here, I guess you need to be an assassin because that's the best way to get the job done. I don't know if it's just me. I think that kind of started ever since Origins, and it went from there. Are you guys an Assassin's Creed fan, and what is your thoughts on Valhalla so far?
After you.
Okay, well, my thoughts on Valhalla are, first of all, I like where you came from. Why call it Assassin's Creed? I started playing Origins a few years ago and put it down. I didn't really connect with it like I did with the original first Assassin's Creed games. To me, this game would have sold better calling it Vikings Valhalla. It looks like an amazing Viking experience. Just call it that. You don't need to bullshit people with, hey, we put the words Assassin's Creed because it's a franchise. We needed to create something. We got to keep the IP and keep money coming in. Ubisoft needs it desperately, It kind of is a cop-out, but I will probably wait to fully pass judgment until it actually comes out and I get my hands on it. I actually get a little bit of the gameplay and see how I experience it. I never played the Witcher game, so you say, oh, it has some elements of the Witcher, and I just went, well, okay, I guess then I wouldn't be as big of a fan of The Witcher if I go back and play it ever, because I'm more likely to watch or to go through and play the Assassin's Creed Valhalla game first.
Mm-hmm. Jaron?
I mean, okay, so I haven't played any of the new, since they've relaunched it, with Origins. I haven't played any of them yet. I have Odyssey. I haven't cracked into it yet. Valhalla, from what I saw, at least the sizzle reel and some of the screenshots, it looks interesting. I'm probably just going to wait for another deep sale or deep discount before I pick that up. Mm-hmm. But I see it. I'm spitballing here. Assassin's Creed is still called Assassin's Creed 1. Like you and Nate said, they're trying to keep the IP. They're trying to keep it's the name brand recognition. But if you want to stretch it a bit, you're an assassin in some way or another, or circumstances force you to pick up unconventional asymmetrical warfare. Mm-hmm. So that's the assassin part. And you're a different warrior, different timelines, different time periods. So you're going to have creeds or an oath or a guide that you follow. So I'm kind of interested to see what kind of creed they have Vikings follow.
So I talked about this a lot on the show. There was one episode we talked about love or hate series. And Assassin's Creed is a love and hate series for me because I always felt like Assassin's Creed, they always have the chip on their shoulder. Like each game, I think they look at another game and they try to use those kind of styles into this and changing the whole thing. I mean, remember the first time we saw Desmond? Like Desmond was something and then Desmond got thrown away. Like they just wrapped him up. But, with all this and the side stuff outside the animus or whatever, I don't really think people really care. Everybody really cared about what's going on in the virtual world and what do we care about these characters like Ezio and all the other kind of characters. And I always argue that this game should have just been an anthology. It should have just been history stories about just different events of people being assassins. No connection. It's just an open-ended story about this particular character, how he decided to become an assassin, get his thing, and to wrap it up was move on to the next historical era they want to do. Now, I might be in the outside of that, but I'll tell you what, I never really care about anything outside of that. I just wanted to know what's going on with this person and this. I didn't care about Desmond's family tree or anything because at the end, Desmond didn't even go do assassin stuff. That's what everybody assumed, right? They assumed that he was going to be we were going to be back in the real world and he was going to learn all these abilities to get to the Templars. But which, by the way, what happened to the Templars? Are they still around? I don't know. Man. Nate, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, the animus is a very interesting concept that I think could have been utilized better. Is if, like you said, they take away the element of having to combine this one narrative that they gave up on. Like you started making bad games and gave up on your narrative. It is evident as you move, beyond was that Revelations, I think, or Brotherhood, somewhere in that time, 3, Black Flag, hell, there were so many of them, but when you run away from your roots and forget the point, it makes people like us go, I agree, I would have loved to have played as Desmond and almost not quite Assassin's Creed, but Assassin's Creed meets Hitman vibes, because it's modern times, he's got to be more stealthy and stuff. But, a big swing and a miss from them. You hit it with the idea of it being an anthology series would have been way cooler. Just let's go to this point in history and see about this assassin. Let's learn what they had to do to survive and get through. Let's meet Altair or Ezio or whoever, is our main character for this particular, game. I love how I'm talking so much bad about Assassin's Creed, and here I am with the collector's edition statue in my room because I love the series at the beginning so much.
Yeah, it's just funny because we love the gameplay and the structure they're trying to do with, but the overall thought of it kind of fell apart. It's kind of like they almost lost control of where the story was going, and so they're just trying to do stuff that works for them now. Because if you really think about it, since I think Assassin's Creed 3, I think every game had a boat battle, and that's kind of crazy now. Because, like, now Valhalla has boats. And I'm like, so are we picking eras now where ship battles have to be included in this? Because Origin had it for a little bit. But does that mean, like, we're never going to get, like, the Samurai and Ninja Assassin's Creed? Because, you know, they probably didn't fight in boats. Which, you know, everybody still wants, like, an Asian-style Assassin's Creed. And not the 3 side projects they did, like the Russia, the India, and all that stuff. That was, to me, that was a waste of time. It was a waste of time. And so, Jaron, I know you wanted that, but now Ghost of Tsushima's around the corner. I don't think it really matters anymore.
Yeah. I and what sucks is, you know, just because of circumstances, I'll have to wait to get Ghosts and Paper Mario Origami King. So
you disappoint me because you were hyped for that Ghost of Tsushima.
I was
hyped for it.
I was hyped for it as well. I mean, I don't know. Circumstances, man. Circumstances. Especially, you know, home ownership's a bitch.
The struggle's real now.
But
home ownership is a hell of a drug. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. I mean, you know, it's a high price you got to pay to tell someone to get off your lawn. Yeah, but I'll get it. I'll get it eventually. But I'm not thirsting for games to play. That's for damn sure.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I agree. I wanted an Assassin's Creed. It was a slam dunk if they did something in Japan. But there's so many ninja stealth games that you can do. You know, Ubisoft would have to just blow things out of the water to stand out. And now that Ghost is coming out, Ghost of Tsushima, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. So
it's almost impossible to chart that water.
Yeah.
Now, because Ghost of Tsushima looks to be like, for me, it was a game that I had not heard of, and all of a sudden Brando said, "Have you seen the trailer in 4K? It's like amazing." And I was like, "No." And I watched it, and I just was mouth agape, like, this could be the coolest game I've ever played. I need this immediately. Yeah. So to try to, like you guys said, to try to go back and do Japan Assassin's Creed is going to look like treading water that's already been perfected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So July 12th is Ubisoft's event. So I'm excited to see what they're going to come with. Will we find out more about Beyond Good and Evil 2? Yes, it will come out in 2023. Just putting that out there because that's like my most excited game, but I know it's not going to come out anytime soon. I think that game should have been prepared for the next gen. Shouldn't even worry about the last gen, how long they're taking with it. Anyways, so Microsoft, they are coming in with their first party event on the 23rd, and they got to come in gun blazing, right? Like PlayStation put it out there. Microsoft is put up or shut up now. So with that, there is rumors going on that actually might come true for me. Jaron, I think I talked about it a while back. I think they should pull the trigger, but they are looking at trying to acquire Warner Brothers Interactive. The people that brought you, Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor, the Batman series.
Mortal
Kombat, I told them that would be the best choice for them because then they would be on the same playing field as PlayStation. Batman versus Spider-Man. Perfect. Let's get that rivalry because Microsoft has always been the rival of PlayStation, but it's never been game-to-game rivalry. It's always been like, my equipment's better than your equipment. But I want that rivalry like Sega and Nintendo, like, I got my Mario, you got your Sonic. What's going on here? And I hope they do get it. I really hope they do. But Nate, do you think they should get it or should they pass on it?
This is an interesting issue for Microsoft to having the ability to acquire a brand like WB Interactive. You guys said it best saying their library of games speaks for itself. So you're acquiring a vast library, but then, the ability to then say, okay, we're going to move forward and start producing new IPs with the best minds from all those different studios working to really put out something that's, a Halo, a Gears of War level worthiness. Like, sure, you can tread water all day, do another Batman series. That would be great. We would love it. We would eat it up. But what we really need is something to really reinvigorate the spark that is Xbox. Master Chief is a dying relic. He doesn't mean the same as he meant Xbox, the original Xbox way back when. So I think they need to, sure, acquire it. But if you acquire it, you have to acquire it in the mindset, we are going to utilize this to our fullest potential and not fumble it, because they could very easily make really big mistakes really quickly and fumble it and have wasted a lot of money.
Jaron?
Yes, and maybe it's a cynic in me, but if they do acquire it, they need to make a huge show of it. They need to say, "Hey, guess what? This is all we got. We got all of this. I'm not saying act like a child, like who got ice cream when nobody else did, but I mean, you get WB, you're getting NetherRealm Studios, you're getting." You're not necessarily getting Rocksteady, who developed the best Arkham games, but you are getting the property for Batman. You're getting the properties for DC stuff. Mm-hmm. That in and of itself, the fact that I have yet to see a solid current, like in the last couple gens, a solid, Superman or a Justice League game. How awesome that would be to get a Justice League game along the lines of Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2. How awesome it would be to for Microsoft to say Mortal Kombat only.
That would hurt. That would hurt people.
Mortal
Kombat for just Xbox. Woo.
Xbox and Windows, because PlayStation in tournaments, people play Mortal Kombat on the PlayStation. So if you lock that up with Xbox, that's going to make a lot of people have to think twice. So Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor, that property, the Lord of the Rings, the rights to put those games out. Yeah, you can do some cool stuff with that, but I don't know. I think one of the big gets would be Batman, the DC properties, and Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, basically anything that Warner Brothers does. Like Xbox can get exclusive to that, and so
that would then mean that they could also remake, and not to say it's one of the greatest properties, but technically they could then remake like Harry Potter based games. Those are Warner Brothers IPs, I do believe.
Yeah,
correct.
So there's a whole market of people. I mean, not personally myself, but I do know there are a lot of people that are Harry Potter fans. So I think that would do very well for them as well.
Oh, actually, I stand corrected. The subsidiaries of Warner Brothers: Avalanche, Monolith, NetherRealm, Rocksteady, Traveler Tales. So they can, so they can do the Fear series. They can bring Fear back.
I forgot about Fear. Yeah.
They can. Let's see. Warner has the rights to the Tomb Raider film series, so I don't know that they can't do anything with the game.
That's a Square Enix talk, though.
Yeah, that'd be a interesting little negotiation. Mm-hmm. But so and of course all their WB games, in various cities, but they have the Middle Earth series, the Lego series, period.
Oh yeah, the Legos. I forgot about the Legos.
Yeah. If Microsoft locks that up, they can be like, hey, Nintendo, we're cool with you. You can have a taste, but to hell with you, PlayStation.
The question I have though is, I think it wouldn't work, but if there's a good deal, they can do it. CG Projekt Red's Witcher 3, I believe, was published by Warner Brothers, if I'm correct. So maybe they could be a deal with that in the future or something like that. I don't know if exclusive will work.
Timed exclusivity. I can see timed exclusivity going. I mean, because you got Scribblenauts, you got the Batman Arkham series, Fear, Injustice, Lego, Middle Earth, Mortal Kombat, and Scribblenauts.
Yeah, especially PlayStation just announced they bought part of the share of Epic. The Unreal Engine. Like that those people, Epic Games, like they bought some of their stakes for that engine. So they're trying to ante up. Microsoft gotta come in. They gotta start buying up some stuff, So I hope they get it. I hope it's a surprise announcement, kind of lay the playing field. But Jaron, let's get to the last one. Something you're excited about coming out of Japan, a Sega arcade mini. What's up with that?
Yeah, so I was excited about it, and until I saw the price. Now I'm still kind of excited about it. But,
$128, right?
It is going to be close to about 100. It's about 12,800 yen, so about $120.
Okay.
Being conservative. So it's the Sega Astro City Arcade Mini. So
have you seen that, Nate?
I haven't actually seen the product, but I've heard about it.
I'll throw you a link in the little chat there. It'll appear it'll appear on the side. But So it
perfect.
reminds me of the Neo Geo Mini arcade,
Mhm.
the way it's designed. I know they're going for that candy cab, that Japanese candy cab construction. This one has 6 buttons, ball top stick, and it comes with 36 games. It's coming out in Japan this December, and it comes with 36 games. So, and it's like, okay, big deal, right? Well, here's what's got my attention.
I know what it is. I knew
Golden
it.
Axe,
I
The
knew it.
Revenge of Death Adder. The actual Golden Axe, Revenge of Death Adder, the arcade game that honestly is surprising it never got a home release.
Jaron's
home or
one of his favorite arcade games of all time, right here, man. He's been wanting that forever.
I mean, I just wanted a damn home release of it. I'd settle for a damn home release of it because it's like it was 4-player. I think it was 4-player arcade game,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the best. It was one of the best beat 'em ups that never got a home release.
Sega's something else, man. Sega
Yeah.
flipping over there.
Sega's leaving a lot of meat on the bone. That's what they do. I mean, there are other games on it too. The arcade version of Virtua Fighter, Fantasy Zone, the original Golden Axe, Alien Storm, Alien Syndrome, Columns 2.
Columns doesn't need to be there. I'm fine without Column.
I mean, hey, you can't have everything be Tetris and Puyo Puyo.
Those don't have to be on there either.
But it has Dark Edge. I haven't heard of that.
Give me that
Puzzle
Sonic
Action,
arcade. Give me that Sonic arcade.
and Altered Beast.
Ultra Beast. Oh, what a waste of space.
The arcade Altered Beast is actually a little
Is
bit
it
more
better?
enjoyable. It's more enjoyable than
Okay.
the Genesis version.
I did not like the second one.
But what's great is that this thing is, it's HDMI. You can HDMI out so you can connect it to your TV. They sell separate game pads, Astro City game pads for like $26 a piece, and hopefully they have something where you can hook up like an arcade stick or a larger arcade stick to it.
Now, the Mini, for people who probably want to get an idea, this is more of something you put on your counter, and then you play it off like that. It's a counter kind of arcade cabinet.
I mean, I wouldn't even call it a counter. You could put it on your lap and lean down because it's not that big.
Oh man, I ain't trying to hurt my back.
If you had to, if in a pinch you could, but yeah. I have a gripe though, and this is the same gripe you've heard millions of times before. Sega has 2 consoles that practically would print money if they went in hard on them, and that's the Dreamcast and the Saturn. And they're pardon my French, but they're fucking around with the Genesis Mini, which that's great, and the Game Gear joke of a mini whatever. They have Dreamcast and Saturn. Just give me like 10 games from each. 10 or 15 games from each.
I would love a Dreamcast Mini. That's one of my favorite consoles of all time.
Yeah, they are sitting on all those properties. They're sitting on all that tech, all that information, and they're just messing around. They're like, oh, whatever. Hey, you know what we haven't done in a while? Another Sega Genesis collection. They're kind of taking baby steps because they're releasing some arcade stuff. Revenge of Death Adder is like a saving grace. That's probably it, depending on what else they announced in that list. But you got Dreamcast and Saturn. Who would not drop $40 or $50 on a Dreamcast, Sega Dreamcast Classics collection?
Yeah.
They release that for the Switch or the PlayStation or whatever like that. I'd be throwing my money at the screen, or if they get the emulation right, a Saturn collection. But I bet they're afraid to admit that they lost a lot of the source code for a lot of their Saturn and Dreamcast stuff.
I call shenanigans. Nate, what's your thought about all this?
I think the Sega Mini Arcade could very well be a cool thing, but not because of the 36 games that come with it, and not because of Death Adder or anything like that. I think it's because this is going to be something highly moddable that people are going to put other things into, and it's still an arcade cabinet. Hopefully, it's built with some quality, because, arcade players kind of tend to beat the hell out of their buttons. So if it's not made with the highest quality and at the 128 or whatever price tag, it has to be made nice. It can't be easily destroyed. So my thought is, it's cool. I interested in seeing what the other 26 games they announce are, but I just see more people using this to have a cabinet that they can mod and put whatever they want on it, as opposed to what is brand new when you buy it from the store.
Do you want a Dreamcast Mini, or do you want a Sega Mini? Do you want one of those to come?
Do I want? Okay. I forgot that was also said. Yeah, I love the Dreamcast and Sega Saturn both. I think that if you're Sega, you need to show people your big guns. And Dreamcast is something they've not ever really messed with as like a rebrand, a relaunch, a comeback. Give us the Dreamcast 2 system, something, man. Like,
right.
I'm aching for it, And Sega could do it if they put their hearts to it. They were a great company for a time, and they've just switched to this like, okay, that's we're just gonna make games, and that's as good as we can get. So, cool that they're bringing this mini out, but I just like, we got one of those what little Nintendo Classic or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What was the first thing that was done on it? Modded with every game now. It's not just what they gave us; it's every game. Okay, so that's cool. Like that's what I see happening here as well.
Yeah.
So I would kill for a Sega Dreamcast Mini. I would love to do a list of like what games would be on there, like the must-have be on there. And I honestly think it would probably run about $80 to $100, just depending how many games and
worth it.
Yeah, and so Dreamcast 2, man, we're trying to work on an episode about that. We're wondering like what happened if a Dreamcast 2 did come at that time, and it was funny because everybody had that hype of that rumor of Xbox and Sega doing something that was going to be exclusive in Japan, the Sega X series or something over there. And it was like, oh, word? I was like, this is going to be cool. Sega going to work with Microsoft. Because, Xbox was basically the spiritual successor of the Dreamcast, if you really think about it.
It is. Yeah. Look at the controller.
Yeah.
Look at the controller. It's a goddamn Dreamcast knockoff. It's like the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Sega's probably just going to say, it's too hard to do, a Dreamcast Mini or a Saturn Mini because emulation's too hard. It's too hard. It's like, you know what? There are a lot of enterprising modders and developers out there. I mean, I know Sega stuff, their arcade boards, everything tends to be a little complicated. But if Sega really wanted to, they would say, "Hey, call up Grandpappy Microsoft, call up Uncle Bill Gates." They're like, "Hey, we want to make this happen. We want to give you a piece of it. Let's do this."
Well, for the listeners, leave your thoughts. What you think on our the post of this episode or on whatever spot you're listening to. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Remember, we are on Twitter and Facebook. So definitely go there to leave some comments and stuff. But it's time to get to know Nate Phillips here. Now, Nate is a creator.
Yo.
He's a network creator. He's behind the scenes. He's the podcast godfather, if I'm correct, what he said. But Nate, for the listeners, kind of give us a little a little history, small history about how this got created and what was your motivation to get this started and whatnot.
Oh boy, okay, this is a fun little story that I don't tell often, but to take it really far back, it was like the summer of 2011 or 12, I started listening to a show on Sirius XM called The Jason Ellis Show. He was a skateboarder Australian who didn't make it as big as Tony Hawk, but him and Tony Hawk were friends. He got a radio show. I became an avid listener. And then before I knew it, I became friends with the show, as well as my girlfriend Sarah, so we knew the show on a little more personal level. We went to Vegas and people knew us, which was kind of like a crazy surreal experience. Well, one of the guys from the Jason Ellis Show broke off from the show. He quit and he started doing podcasts, and he did this show called Josh Figures It Out. And episode 1 of Josh Figures It Out, he listed off all these ideas he had. An idea like 5 or 6 in Septicast. I want to do a podcast within a podcast. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I love that idea. How would he do it? And what he said was I'll start my podcast and I'll do something, and then maybe someone else's entire show will come on and take over my show. So I created Journey into Comics. I literally brainstormed ideas for a couple weeks, thought about the ideas. I had already had music equipment to record with, so it wasn't like I had to go buy stuff to make this happen. I already had everything at my disposal. I sat down, I think it was like January 13th of 2014, and recorded episode 1, which would be known as Repilot, because I had to re-upload it because the audio was so quiet because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But that episode then went on to feature on Josh Figures It Out. That episode got like 10,000 plays. It was absolutely insane. I'm like super green at the time and have no idea what I'm doing. And his show is giving me exposure. And it carried for a little bit, you know, and I invited Brandon on. We started talking, and then eventually he became a co-host. We started then, after probably like 50 or so episodes, contemplating like other shows. Man, I would love to do a game show, Brandon said. And I thought, a wrestling show would be fun, or, you know, a show based on like food and movies could be cool. And we didn't say we couldn't do that. We didn't have anybody telling us what the laws of podcasting were. So we just created our own network within our network. And before it was officially the network, we just had a few shows that were like, every now and again, you'd get a Journey into Wrestling, or every now and again, you'd get a Foodies episode. But it wasn't like dedicated, not until 2017.
Okay.
Now, 2017, things quickly changed, and I kind of like laser focused. Brandon and I were on our way to episode 150, and we thought, what's next? Like, what do you do after 150 episodes of a show? How do you evolve further? And the idea of the network had kind of always been in the back of our heads. So we pulled the trigger and we asked people, hey, do you want to create a show for our network? Your ideas, whatever they are, we support them. We'll help culture your ideas and fine tune the production and all that. Just create for us. And for 2 years, literally from October of 17 until like May of 19, we had an episode come out every single day of the week in rotation. We never missed a day. So it was locked in. You'd have Journey into Comics every Monday, Pour 360 or whatever AP was doing, because his show has kind of evolved through time. On Tuesdays, Wednesday would be one of 2 shows bi-weekly. Thursday is always Podcastrophe. Friday, one of 2 shows bi-weekly, so they trade off, you know. Saturday, Brews with Dudes. Sunday, Dungeons with Dudes. And then coronavirus hit. And I mean, as we were leaving 2019, we'd only maybe missed like 2 or 3 episodes, and it really wasn't that hard to do content. But a lot of our shows required people to be in groups. So when February hits and the coronavirus thing becomes a real thing we're thinking about, shows were like, we have to pull back. We can't do an episode of Brews with Dudes with 5 guys in a small room sharing a beer. That could be a way to contract the virus. Like, we have to take our health very seriously. So we pulled it back a little bit. You know, we have 1 week now that's really heavily dedicated to like most of the shows. And then like this week, it's light. It's just Journey into Comics, Journey into Wrestling. That's it. And the next week it'll be like 5 or 6 shows. And then it'll be 2 shows the next week. So until we can get things back to normal, or whatever normal is going to be from here on out, you know, we're doing our absolute best. We do have some new shows in the pipeline. I'm always looking for creators to come on and collaborate with to do new other shows. You know, the only thing it takes if you're going to be on our network is dedication. That's all I ask.
Okay, so knowing you and knowing your structure, I kind of do something similar to that, except most of my shows, and probably my listeners know that I do a lot of my shows pre-recorded. So my goal is, most of the time, if I have an idea for a series, I normally like to have a bunch of episodes out and then have prepared to kind of, you know, put out by them on their own while I'm working on another project. Your system has including a lot more people than mine, because my people is probably maybe like 6 deep, I want to say. Jaron, I think it's about like 6 deep, I want to say. And
yeah, 6 deep.
Yeah, and yours is definitely like way bigger. Like, if you go, for the listener, if you go to Podbean or to their website, they have like way more shows than I have. And I'm not even including the YouTube. I don't know if you have any other like specialty only exclusive to YouTube. But
some stuff's been exclusive to YouTube. We had a Patreon for a time that had exclusive episodes. So there are a lot of different things we have done that are exclusive. But for the most part, people can just go to journeyintocomics.com, and on the right-hand side of our actual website is the archive where you can go through and find any episodes you want very easily from whatever show you're looking to listen to.
So my question for you is, how do you structure yourself to be able to do all these shows and still have a life?
I'm going to be very real with you. I'm a high functioning stoner. I exist on, the best foods on earth and as much cannabis as I can take in, just because I have such an ADHD brain that having multiple projects is not a big deal for me. Having multiple concepts to run through, but I have to have something that gives me some semblance of structure. So as soon as I find the structure, everything falls into place. And I can really, the best part about the network, one thing I cannot stress enough is my team, all the people that do these shows. Because like I said, sure, I'm on a lot of different shows here and there, but I'm not the guy on every single show doing every episode at all, not even close. And a lot of shows, I've only maybe appeared on one episode, if any at all. But it's trust, man. It's really, my team looking at him and saying, listen, we're going to do this and bring your best, whatever your best is that week. If you don't feel like you can put on a show, just pick up your phone, send me a text and say, hey, I'm having a rough week. I'm not vibing it. Like, we should hold off a week. It doesn't kill your show to wait 1 week to put out better content. We have to look at things differently. And when we were a fine oiled machine and having an episode that went, I think we were like 600 straight days without missing an episode or whatever it was, that was a mixture of luck and determination. It could have very easily fallen apart. It could have very easily been people missing episodes, but we were all kind of working and still are working for each other. I don't necessarily do the network just for me. I do it because of all the cool people I'm attached to that I get to see what they create. That's the joy of this. That's why they call me the Podfather, because I love helping birth other ideas that aren't my own.
Okay.
Oh, testify there. Someone's testifying.
Right. Are any of your shows kind of pre-recorded ahead of time, or do you guys actually kind of take it week by week?
It genuinely will depend. Some shows, Brandon and I right now are creating a new series that literally will not launch until we are 100% done with series 1. We've recorded 4 episodes so far. We've got another 8 or so episodes to go. Once it's done, we will then release one at a time. But then other shows like Journey into Comics, how can you pre-record a show with so much news always happening in the medium of comic books or even the comic book industry? Or Journey into Wrestling, another great example. Sure, you could be encapsulated, maybe only talk about wrestling from the 90s, but there's so much happening right now in the modern era that it's almost impossible not to just be as up-to-date as you can be.
Damn right, man. Damn right.
So, for the listeners that want to start a podcast network, not so much a podcast, because I honestly think nowadays doing a podcast show is easy to do. The hardest part is committing to that. But for you personally, what tips can you give people about creating a network? What are some ideas and tips that kind of help them, stay on the vibe, stay successful in their own minds and whatnot?
Okay, so a couple things. First of all, I said it in the jump, determination is a very important thing. If you don't have the determination to continue through with a concept, putting a network together, it's probably going to crumble really quickly. It's very hard to make something just grow its own legs and go. You don't have that. It just doesn't exist. But more importantly, it's collaborating with people you love and enjoy collaborating with and saying, like, example, I like you guys. You are both great dudes to podcast with. The first thing in my head as we're talking is, as soon as we're done, I'm probably going to say, hey, do you guys want to create a new show on my network? Like, just because we're very quickly bonding and I can tell you guys have the same drive. It's an intangible that I can't look at you and just say you have it. I can hear it, how you present yourself. You know what I'm saying? But then, overall, you got to just be Nick Fury about it. Put together the team that is going to work, and don't let that team give up even when it wants to.
Okay.
I mean, sometimes you got to push your team to be better. I've had people say, I don't know, I'm not feeling my show anymore. And instead of going, okay, well, you can just be done with it, my first question is, well, what's stale about it? How can we reinvigorate, reinvent, bring some new life to your show? What other segments or ideas can we, immediately I go into create. Anything can be created, or anything that is created can become better by creating more ideas into that world. So just as I'm rambling here thinking about the network, I think that a lot of it too came from just like, here's a stupid idea that's also really cool. Let's see how far we can take it. Brews with Dudes is an idea that got pitched to me, and I was like, I don't really drink beer. It's not my jam. Like, I don't really get down with that. But I love the concept. Here's all my ideas. Lay them on the table. And then also letting one thing that's very important with our network. It's not like I'm the only guy that talks to everybody. We have a group chat with all 15 of us that are in there, talking all the time, carrying on different ideas, talking about politics, talking about life. Something funny might happen at the store that you get on video, you share it there, because we are all a family. The network really is the family. Like it's beyond my actual family, the closest thing I have to family. Yeah.
Okay. I got one more question before I break off and let Jaron ask you some questions. With the people that you work with, were these the people that you grew up with, or were they through other friends that help become this family?
Well, really, the most beautiful thing about the Journey into Comics Network, 99%, and I literally mean that number. I would say, I actually honestly cannot name a person that's a part of our network that hasn't, all at one time or another before they had a show, guested on Journey into Comics. Okay. So they all had this, they obviously love for comic books. They're nerdy of some sorts. Maybe they love other things. They collect other things. But, the funny thing is, there's only one person I podcast with that I grew up with, and that's Brando. Mm-hmm. Everybody else are new friends and new people who I have only met through podcasting. Brandon introduces me to Blaine, who then creates Podcastrophe, who then brings Tyler on, who then becomes my co-host on Journey into Comics after Brandon leaves. Like all of this spider webbing, because we're always a team. We're always vibing, flowing with each other. Again, creating ideas and concepts, pushing the limits. What can we do? Right now in the world we live in, you guys know this, video podcasts are pretty much the way it has to be done, unless you really could give a fuck less, and no offense, you want to let people come to your house and run the risk.
Yeah.
So that has allowed us to flex a new muscle, like, oh, I have a webcam, I have a decent computer, we could do video podcasts and present them in a way that isn't like anything we've done before. That's a great idea. And that inspiration and all that love comes really from Brandon. He is the video creative mind. He always is like, I have this great idea to make the show a video show. Let's do it.
I know. When I do my show with World Gaming Trade Show with him, he gets hype. It's a really good vibe about that show, because we just go at it. And for people that don't know what that show is, it's basically a show where we take games that haven't been talked about for a long time, bring them in, and talk about which developers we like to have on there. Just to give you a clue, for this month, by the time you listen to this, we are doing a Star Wars episode, so definitely check that one out. It's really good. Jaron, why don't you go ahead and ask him a question? I know you got him over there.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I was enjoying listening to you two go back and forth, putting on a clinic. I can just tell the passion in, Nate's voice about podcasting and putting it all together. I almost would have been happy, you guys just cut a separate episode about So You Want to Start a Podcast. you two probably end up you two would tear it up. And it gave me an excuse to eat one of these ribs.
Yeah, get that rib. That's what I love to hear.
I killed 2 ribs and a whole thing of macaroni. I'm telling you. But I have a question for you. So you mentioned earlier that you actually do a podcast that involves, I believe your girlfriend, right? Or your partner?
Yep.
Okay, so I've occasionally, kicked around with my fiance, hey, we should do something, but it's the stage fright and everything. What would you suggest for those who, don't think they would have anything to say, or they're apprehensive, they're not that outgoing when it comes to that, to podcasting?
Well, that's okay. Great question. How do you get someone over kind of the stage fright? And then a mixture of, I'm sure, a lot of people have the question of it's not super common you have couples that podcast or can do it successfully for a long time. And really subject matter is the most important key. know what you're going in to talk about, and know what you want your show to be. Always know your intention going in, that helps get over stage fright well. And I think I'm kind of at a disadvantage here, you guys. Like, my girlfriend, she also is the lead singer of our band. So obviously she does not have a fear of talking. It's not that big of a deal. So when we were deciding to do a podcast, it was all very easy. This was all a lot easier than I'm sure most people have, and a lot of people have different family dynamics where having two people podcast in a household is almost impossible when you have a child involved or anything like that, pets possibly. So the dynamic of getting someone seasoned for doing it, a couple test runs, if the person's like, I don't like my voice, you'll get over that after about 10 episodes, or don't listen to your own show.
That's very true.
There's one of two ways. Either don't listen to the product you're putting out, which I've always said, any show I'm on, I try to make sure that I can say without a question, I would listen to that show. Like, I definitely would go back and listen to my own self, because if I can't say that, who else would want to listen to me? What's the point? Gotta hype yourself if you're gonna hype others, and like I said, test runs. The missus doesn't think she's confident in doing a podcast. Record 40 minutes of her talking to you, not necessarily in podcast form, and just say, look what you did. It was easy. We just held conversation and the mics were on. The mics didn't change what we were saying. It doesn't matter if people do or don't hear this. That's another thing I've always told the people on the network. Don't concern yourself with whether we're getting 1,000 plays or one play. People are going to hear your show, and if they want to listen to more, they will find it. It's not that hard. And we've had some success thinking like that.
Right on. No, that makes a lot of sense. My takeaway from it is secretly record her during one of our conversations and then play it back. Yeah. No.
I mean, that's a way to do it. That is a way to do it, right? I mean, you're not wrong. Like, hey,
I want to sleep without, worrying about not waking up the next day.
Totally.
Okay. So I know that you do multiple podcasts, and I mean 600 days or podcasts every
it's
day.
A lot. It's a lot of episodes.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, I know the passion is there, but there's always, like you said, there's always going to be off days where the energy's not there or circumstances beyond your control. What have you done personally to, I guess, keep your energy levels up? Even if you're not feeling it, what do you do to keep that presence?
Well, I'll actually tell a kind of a personal story that is from about a year and a half ago at this point. About this time, a little bit earlier this last year, our cat passed away, and one of our longtime family pets, very much adored and loved. And I had to record a podcast that day, and it was what we call a solo cast, where it's just me by myself. And I sat down to do it and immediately went, I can't speak right now because I'm a mess. What do I do? And I said, okay. Like, I need to make sure whatever show I was doing at the time, stay the far away as I can from what is happening in my real world, and try to give people what I'm not feeling, and mask how I'm feeling by almost acting. I mean, I'm not trying to say I'm a great actor or whatever, but mask it by way of not letting it slip through the cracks that I am suffering or feeling grief or anything like that. And it's hard. It's so difficult to, swallow your pride and you're feeling, loss, or you've had a fight with your significant other or family member is sick, or, whatever it is, to go, okay, the world, that's still happening. It's not going to stop. Can I put it away for an hour and create and give myself some joy while hopefully inspiring and giving other joy back as well? And that's really what got me through that moment specifically.
It's almost like what you would say, like with any artist, like, when you're on stage or you're putting on a show, you're this person. And then off the stage, you're back to your old self. That's what I kind of feel with this. I have to kind of have a different persona here. Like, I am Jeremy the host, not Jeremy all the time, in that kind of mindset, if that makes sense. And so
absolutely, that's exactly kind of how it has to be. And a lot of times with podcasting, at least with Journey into Comics Network, a lot of the shows I'm on, there is a blurred line between who I am in front of people and who I am on stage, because I'm very much the same person, just turned up to 11 in front of the camera or in front of the microphone or whatever, So when you're grieving, it's hard, but turning yourself up to a higher frequency, trying to remember why you do podcasting in the first place. You did it because it gave you some form of enjoyment. So remember that enjoyment and let it carry you through a bad moment. And a lot of times I feel podcasting is very cathartic to help you get over grief and whatnot. And it's a great, in a lot of ways, a great way to kind of catalog your own journey in life. One thing I will always say is, if I died tomorrow, man, my family has a humongous backlog of me that they can just really dive into things I maybe never said to them, I maybe never elaborated, but it's there. It's who I am. It exists as this thing that is my passion, podcasting.
It's like an open journal.
Yes.
It is
Dear Diary.
It is. It's You're a peek into you. Actually, that's a good point. Something that I think more people should consider, especially as they get into the grown folk age of late 20s through the 30s and everything like that, is if you have a family, keep a log of some sort, because if something ever, God forbid, something ever happens to you, your loved ones or ever having that voice or having that video of you is such a comfort. I mean, that's something I wish, I had more of, my mom. I lost my mom last year, and I wish I had more, a voice, audio or video of her, hearing her voice. I can still hear her voice in my head, but a voice can bring back so much. So no, I dig that. And as far as bringing the energy, you're right. When anything can happen. Like I could have the worst day or week or whatever. And when Jeremy and I record, a different switch hits and boom, I'm into it. I'm rolling into it. I might be a little saltier in some of my opinions, but
Yeah.
I still compartmentalize it.
It's called showing up to the office. You still got to show up to the office, and podcasting is special for us because it's not a job. You're probably not earning a lot of money doing this, if any at all, and it's about the passion of doing it. So you got to show up to the office. There's not a boss telling you to show up to the office.
Yeah, especially like you and I, Nate, being one of the kind of the big top guns of the network. We have to lead by example, right? Like if that
is the most annoyingly true thing you could have said, but yes.
Yeah, like you have to keep the energy up so everybody can have the energy up too, because this is your network, you're the leader. And so, it is what it is for that. But at the same time, to know that your group is still, still going because you're still going, it kind of makes you kind of happy. Because because one of the most things you're using from them is time. They're dedicating their time to you, and you really want to make sure their time gets used in a great way. And with that, let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to get into what this really is about, comics and games. We'll be right back. Hey, this is the network creator Jeremy Evans, and I want to say thank you for listening to this episode of the show as part of the In-Game Boss program. And if you enjoy this, then you should definitely check out all our other great content we have on this network. Remember, you can always follow, subscribe, leave a comment, or concerns because we would love to hear your thoughts. And lastly, enjoy the rest of the show. And welcome back. I am Jeremy. This is Jaron, and this is Nate. Now, I brought Nate on here for one reason only. He does comics. I mean, I don't know any other comic podcast show right now. I mean, I could really try. But Brandon recommended him, so I was like, cool, let's do this. So,
I'm glad I could come by Brando's recommendation. That's awesome.
So, I thought the idea of, our show never really did comics that would be great as video games because honestly, like, I'm an amateur when it comes to comics. I mean, I read like Archie, Sonic the Hedgehog comics, and I read some Marvels here and there, Spider-Man, Wolverine, X-Men, and all that stuff. I was a big X-Men comic person, I will say that. But I never got too much into it because it costs so much to be a collector of comics. I think that's expensive, hobby. More expensive to me than video games, weirdly enough.
Yeah.
And so, but Brandon here, and listening to his show, I'm sorry, Nate here, I apologize. Nate here,
it's okay.
He does, so much into comics and stuff. Like, he's the perfect expert for this to kind of give us more knowledge about comics, let alone even probably some of the choices that we picked. So basically where it goes is we have picked 2 comics each with a third one as an honorable mention. And we're going to talk about what we want that to be as a video game. And, just for extra points if you have it, what developers that we want to see. Nate, you are our guest of honor on this show, and we're excited to have you. And as the leading person of comics in here, I'm not saying Jaron doesn't read comics either, but, he doesn't have a podcast of comics. We want you to go ahead and, take the lead on the first pick that you want to talk about.
So, short story time. First of all, admittedly, when you first came to me with this idea, I was like, oh, that's a good one. I wish I would have thought of that. Man, that's such a clever concept of an episode to decide what comics that haven't or have maybe had some form of video game IP, what would you do and how and why? And one of the first games that just popped into my head, it's one of my all-time favorite series. I've hyped it on Journey into Comics from day one, and I still to this day talk about it, is a limited series that only lasted 60 issues from Image Comics called Chew, C-H-E-W, Chew. Now, Chew is about this guy, Tony Chew, C-H-U, different spelling, who is a Cibopath. What is a Cibopath, you might ask? Well, that's a guy who, when he eats something, every instant of the thing he ate's life flashes before his eyes, and he can see where that thing was. If he eats an apple off a tree, he'll watch the apple grow from the tree, fall from the tree, the farmer pick it up and put it. So, of course, being a detective, he goes to a murder scene, and he doesn't have any idea who killed this guy or how or why or what happened. So he does something that may be unconventional and decides to take a bite out of him, which reveals the killer in his mind, and he knows who kills him. His power just keeps getting worse and weirder as other crazy things start happening. Like, one thing that's important to mention in this universe, chicken has been banned. Chicken's illegal. You can't eat it.
Why?
But see, they've genetically modified frogs with chicken DNA to create a new species called a chog. But a chog doesn't do what you think it would. Does it taste great? Sure, it tastes just like chicken. It also makes you trip balls like you've done 5 tabs of acid. So chogs are very highly potent. So a little bit of the setup there. Another thing that's important to mention, there's the main character who's like the vampire character who can take anyone who has a food-based superpower and steal their power by eating them. And there's another guy who's got the ability to mold any weapon he wants in the world out of chocolate.
Interesting. Okay.
So there's a wide array of different characters you can play with in this world. So thinking about it, who would develop a game like this?
Now, can I pause you for a second?
Sure.
For the listeners, if you go look it up like I did, the one thing came to my mind is if this was an animation show, I feel like the people that did Invader Zim would do this because the animation is very similar. Am I wrong?
Jonan Vasquez, great reference.
Am I wrong? Did anybody see that Invader Zim kind of feel vibe in there?
Yeah, considering how dark Chew can get and Jonan Vasquez's sense of humor, it would probably be a good fit.
Yeah, that's why I just got the feel of that. That's all I wanted to say. Yeah,
and I think that's actually why I love Chew so much. It definitely gave me Johnny the Homicidal Maniac vibes. That's a Jonan Vasquez book that came out before Invader Zim was a thing. Definitely go check that out if you can find it. But who would make a game like Chew? Like, how would you do it? What would you do? Why would you do it? Obviously, you'd play as Tony Chew. You could technically take the exact storyline from the comics and make it a video game. It would be very entertaining. There's outer space stuff. There's turns and twists and betrayals and all kinds of fun that a great story has. But who makes that? And how would you make it? What would you base it on? And the first thing I thought of, being that he's a detective, is how cool would it be for Rockstar to make a bully / LA Noire crossover type game of Chew, where instead of it looking like your GTAs, your Red Deads, and their standard amazing graphic quality, they actually give it the cell shade and make it look kind of Borderlands-esque.
Okay.
I
make it more like a comic book world, basically.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because it's such a ridiculous story that you don't need it to look hyper-realistic. I don't need to see Tony Chu actually eat a guy and blood spurt out of him and it look real. It'd be cooler if it looked like the comic and it was more kind of comical and hilarious, which is the ridiculousness of that book, honestly. And it was an amazing ride, all 60 issues. It's not easy to find. A lot of those single issues are near impossible to find. You're going to have to get them in trade paperbacks. But yeah, my first pick is Chew. That's all I got to say about that.
So let me go a little bit into Chew with you. If
Sure.
you were the character, how would you go into this gameplay? Like, would you be going to different murder scenes and kind of do the LA Noire kind of investigation and then choose like what you want to eat kind of thing? Would that be something that you would like to see that?
Yeah, and the one thing I think is important is eating a person makes Tony very sick.
Okay.
Like every time Tony eats somebody to figure out what happened to them, which, spoiler alert, people within Tony's own family start dying. So he has to then eat members of his family to see how they died. So what happens if you have, okay, so sure, there are 3 different investigations Tony's working on, one of which is a murder. But you just solved a murder, and he has eaten a human within 24 hours. So you've got a little timer that says you can't eat. You have to solve this mystery without eating the guy. You have to figure out a different way to look at the scenario. You do have to pick and choose. You know, I think that'd be very clever. And there's so much that can be done in that universe. There's so many opportunities for them to make spin-offs, sequels, do things that never got done. You know, Steven Yeun, the guy that was Glenn on The Walking Dead, actually was cast to voice Tony Chu in an animated series that still has not been made by Showtime.
Okay.
Wow. That would be a good pick there. I'd love to see that.
Jaron, do you have any input on that other than my input?
No, well, one, I did not know Chew had become so hard to find. I need to go back into my comic box because I think I still have issue 1 of it. But
if you have a pure issue 1, that's like a $600 book right now.
I need to go check and make sure because that would be really cool. But because I remember picking up Chew somehow, and I think it was because I had an issue of it. But needless to say, don't get me excited by telling me prices. but
fair.
I don't know. I with the cell shaded and the LA Noire, you know, bully style, I could see that. I'm kind of wondering, you know, because a lot of people say, well, what about, you know, all these enemies? Like you said, the guy who can make a weapon, any kind of weapon out of chocolate. Would you have sort of a confrontation similar to LA Noire, you know, multi-phase, or would it be, you know, kind of it would change the style to where it becomes a stand-up fight? How does Tony Chu deal with physical antagonists?
Not very well. Usually he's the run and hide and try to figure it out. I mean, he'll shoot his way out of any situation, obviously. Yeah. Because he is still an agent of I want to say it's like the FSA, but don't quote me on that. It's been a minute since I've read through the series. But he has another, a team of other guys that work with him as well that have stories, and they are also equipped. So it's not just, linear one guy playing. You have a team of people that could, very easily have some turn-based element or, switch between character elements like your Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy VII Remake more accurately. Yeah, I think that really this game, if made, could be very, very eye-opening to people who have no idea what Chew is. And I've always been like, oh my God, make an animated series so people can learn how cool this is because it's great. Like, it's so clever.
It definitely would be like a Suda 51 kind of game.
I was going to say No More Heroes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see Suda 51 doing this too. So, okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he'd have fun with that one. Yeah.
Yeah, especially like with Killer 7. I mean, that game's already weird enough. So, okay, so my pick, for people that listen to the show or don't know, I'm a big sci-fi person. I'm a huge sci-fi person. Fifth Element is my favorite sci-fi movie of all time. And the pick I did is basically more of a cyberpunk sci-fi. And I actually love the 2012 movie Dredd. And so Judge Dredd was a pick I have. Now, I haven't read too much about Judge Dredd, but based on what I have read so far and based on the story of it, that comic book is just weird. It starts out kind of simple, but then it just gets out there. Like, there's time traveling, there's dimensions. It just gets weird. But Dredd never really got the love I think it deserved because they only had, like, two games, and they didn't do very well, and we haven't had one over a decade. And I think now, with the possibility of Cyberpunk showing us this great way of what sci-fi can look like, that and Deus Ex, Mankind Divided and Humankind Revolution, Judge Dredd can do that too. And so for me, I would love it to be a giant sandbox of, Mega City 1. And it would be a third person over the shoulder, but also a little bit of Batman when it comes to the melee. So certain events, he would do the whole, everybody surrounding him, he can do combos and whatnot. But on the main gameplay and all that, it's over the shoulder shooter. And I would have him use the judgment system. Basically, when you go down with a criminal, in the comics, he is the law. He is the judge. He makes all decisions on the fly. So in that moment, you have to decide what your faith of this person is. Like, does he die? Does he go to jail? So that's something that's really interesting me. But the thing about Dredd, though, is he doesn't really have a personality. He's just a guy that's just a cop. And what I want to do for this game is you carve him out the way you want him to be. What Dredd do you want him to be? Do you want him to be still this professional, or do you want him to be more hardcore? Because there's no way he's going to be nice. There's no nice side of this. I don't want no nice side. I want him to be like he's professional, like he's just going by the rules, or hardcore. Like, if you think he deserves to be murdered, then, he's going to be murdered. He's getting death. But also I wanted to mix, with stuff like, the car scenes. Like, he drives a bike with guns mounted on and everything. But one of the things I really want is the skill tree to be based on not so much his skills, but the elements of what he has. So Lawgiver is a gun that he has that has like over different ammunitions and also like grenades and pulse. The skill tree can help level up those kind of weapons. Like, you level up enough points, you can add a new bullet to your gun. So, and if
or
you
a new scope or something.
Yeah, something to add on to the gun. The Lawmaster is his car, his motorcycle, so you can definitely upgrade the motorcycle so it can help take down criminals and everything like that. Then one I made up is called the Lawmaker, and that's basically his melee, his special moves that he can do. And I want the fighting to be mixed with hand combat, but with guns too, and his baton and all that stuff. So it's more of his own style instead of like just being like Batman, because he's not a person that's going to jump and flip over people. He's a person that's going to block and probably just bash your leg with the baton and then maybe uppercut with a gun. I don't know. That guy should have been in Mortal Kombat. Anyways, I also want where the city's alive and then just random moments happen too on top of that. Like, there is a main story where, something he'll partner up with other judges and he has to make hard choices in that. But at the same time, I do like the moments when you're driving the city, something randomly happens and you have to go take care of it and, judge that person for whatever. So that's my idea for Judge Dredd. And I think that now would be a good time because you can make this world so massive and so awesome in this awesome dystopia. So that's it.
One thing that immediately jumped out to me when you said that is how cool would it be too if, when you go back into the precinct, they're like, Dredd, you got to stop just putting people in jail. We're running out of space. Or Dredd, there's no one in jail. You've killed everyone. What are you doing? It would be fun because there's like the dichotomy between those two. And then, there's a lot of little funny things they could do with the dialogue there. I love that. I would eat a Judge Dredd game up. And one thing I don't know if you're aware, Judge Dredd is actually one of the biggest comic series of all time. I think it's got something like 1,400 issues.
Okay.
Damn.
So it's a big boy. There's a lot to pull from. You could tell multiple stories. This could possibly, if your game was made, end up being a game that had a sequel and a sequel to the sequel and a sequel to the sequel to the sequel. And now we're here at Judge Dredd Valhalla.
Yeah, that's true. No, that's very true because like the first game I think would be kind of like pretty simple, and then the second one they would just go bonkers. Like just let it go. Why not? And just have fun with it. So.
Oh yeah, and not to mention, especially because a lot of people's exposure to Judge Dredd was either Stallone or the Carl Urban movie. So to get a pure, the Carl Urban I liked more because of that.
Yeah, the 2012.
It felt closer to the comics. But I would love to see, how you deal with Judge Death and journeys out to the wastelands. So all of that would be very, very interesting, especially the fact that you are judge, jury, and executioner. So, I mean, yeah, the sentence is death. You could try harder to take them in, or you could just blow the brains out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, this game is definitely mature. Couldn't do anything else. Got to be mature.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Jaron, what you got, man?
All right, so I'm going to start off with old Marvel comic team back in the 1984, I believe. They were called the Power Pack. So it was I believe four kids, the Power Children. Julie, Alex, Katie, and what's his name? Jack. Yeah. Julie, Alex, Katie, Jack, and Julie, Alex, Katie, Jack, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, so four kids, they get powers from these aliens because they're trying. Their dad discovers some process to generate energy, and this other alien race tries to stop them, and then this member of this good alien race tries to save them because it would destroy their planet. And through a whole series of adventures, the kids end up getting powers, different powers. Strength, speed, energy, things like that. So, just briefly, they're pretty much an ancillary team in that, they've had some interactions with the X-Men and maybe the, Fantastic Four and other individuals like that. But they're mostly just, four kids who age 12 to 5. The youngest is 5 years old. And they go around and they're dealing with life being, little kids as well as fighting, these supervillains. So it's funny because the comic book was popular, but it wasn't popular enough to get a long run. Like they brought it back again and after the 80s, they brought it back again in 2000, like a mini series, and you saw the characters kind of appear in other books. But I don't know. It was one of those. It was one of those that I always liked. How it was like, okay, these kids are just they're literally freaking kids. They can destroy entire cities if they really wanted to, but they're just worried about getting home in time for dinner and homework. It's like Powerpuff Girls before the Powerpuff Girls.
I was gonna say like it sounds a lot like Powerpuff Girls. Hands down.
Yeah, it was Powerpuff Girls before the Powerpuff Girls, and except these kids have they have actual biological parents, but no, it's if it were to be a game. I would love to see it as a almost. I would love to see it as a. Oh, what's the word? Not XCOM. No, I almost
not
said
like a Marvel Alliance kind of style.
No, I wanted to see it as more of an action RPG, not Marvel Ultimate Alliance style, but kind of like
X-Men
Battle Chasers.
Oh, okay.
No, well, okay. Yeah, Battle Chasers, Night War, something like that. Where you have all four of the kids because it's perfect number 4, and you have to determine which powers for which situation. Now, add to that the kids eventually develop a method where they could end up swapping powers with each other.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I mean, it obviously with siblings. it's like, oh, I want to be the fast one, or I want to have density, things like that. And you end up, forcefully swapping powers with your little brother or your little sister, and you guys squabble. But they can actually change powers with each other. So using that, you can actually combine powers. You can swap out powers because maybe you want Alex to have super speed because he has this stat or that stat, and you want Jack to have gravity control because he has this stat or that stat. So it would add a strategy element into it in order for you to take on these various enemies and various bosses. So I would definitely like to see it as an action RPG, and and not to mention, depending on the developer, as far as the developer, I could totally see. Well, considering if we're going by actual politics, there's no way anyone outside of what who owns the rights to Marvel games right now? It's not EA.
Was that Insomniac?
No, Insomniac has stuff for Spider-Man, but actually, what? I think,
right. But then would it be Disney then still?
Yeah, I mean, Disney can option it out to whomever. If they were optioned out to someone, I would like to see it either THQ Nordic, because that would be interesting just to see what they would do. Or if we're going to have a developer, I would like to see, as much as I hate saying this, I would actually be interested to see what Activision would do. Okay. Activision, or if we're going lower key, Sucker Punch.
Okay. I guess since you have a developer, I would probably say Rockstar for Dread for me. I think Dread makes a perfect home for Rockstar for my game. My question for you, though, is I noticed through the pictures that they do a lot of crossovers. Like, I seen him with Wolverine. I seen him with Spider-Man. I seen all this stuff. Would like to have that kind of style where, like, maybe they jump into the different worlds of, like, different heroes and try to, like, see if that works for them? It's almost like trying to find their own home. But it doesn't work. Like, we'll go to Spider-Man. That didn't work. Let's go to X-Men. That didn't work. I don't know. Yeah. I'm just asking if that's a good idea, or would you like cameos where they come into their worlds and do stuff?
Well, that's part of what they were. Yes, actually, that's part of what they were also known for. They were always kind of like on the fringes of other heroes' stories. Like they were in the Fall of the Mutants, storyline, the Inferno storyline. They were ancillary. They were interacting with the New Mutants. So if you get the right developer that maybe has rights to a lot of the X-Men or the Fantastic Four, you could totally have a crossover, a little mini crossover. It's like, hey, they're helping the X-Men. Oh, the X-Men are looking for such and such. Oh, the Power Pack now has to fight Sabretooth. Okay. Or the Power Pack has to help the Fantastic Four take on Super Skrull or whatever. So you could have cool little missions like that.
So I preach about this, and I'll let Nate talk. I always say Larian Studios because I love their battle system, their RPG game Divinity and Divinity 2. And I said this once before, like they should be doing an X-Men game because that system works perfect for that. And I think it'll work for this group too, the Power Pack. And you get these cameos, people coming in as guests to kind of help out in these moments. And I think that will work. That way the kids kind of get their own moves, and you can pick how you want those kids' powers to be. Since they can swap, you can basically make them the way you want.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Nate, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think one thing is very important to mention. You're talking about crossovers. Talking about the Power Pack is you almost cannot speak on the Power Pack without mentioning Jack Power's best friend, who is Franklin Richards, which is the son of Sue Richards. So, and actually, truth be told, Franklin at one time, and I don't know how long exactly, he was a one-time member of the Power Pack. So you could very easily throw Franklin in, have him play his Smarty Pants version of himself. That's his alias when he's with the Power Pack. It would be really cool because, again, you could utilize the negative zone if you've got the Fantastic Four stories. You can send the kids into space. You talk about power swapping. You could also power combine. If my memory serves me correct, I think at one point more recently, like maybe the Marvel Now Power Pack reboot, I think they could combine powers like of the two.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that.
Oh,
but
actually, you're right. Alex at one point got absorbed all of their powers, and they fought about it a little bit. He's like, fine. They had to go to counseling because siblings, they're being hostile and everything. So yeah, no, that's actually a great idea.
Okay.
But yeah, and I think Franklin Richards, he was a member. He was just considered, their friend. He was I think they call him Tattletale.
He was the Billy of the Power Rangers.
Oh, well, yeah, that's best. I mean, granted, Franklin has some really devastating powers that haven't matured yet, but they called him Tattletale, which was I thought was just cute because
so was he kind of like a rogue person?
I can't remember exactly what his power was. I would only assume that if his let's see, Franklin Richards, his power, because he is a mutant. He is a mutant. But I think he was like psionic abilities, like telekinesis and telepathy. Okay. That's probably why he was called Tattletale. Okay. But I don't think they really. I mean, at least during Power Pack, they didn't really go really deep into what all he could do. So you didn't see that shit until Onslaught.
Anything else you want to add to that, Nate?
No, I think that the idea and concept of this is awesome. I would love to see a Power Pack game. That's my final thought. Yes, okay. Sign me up.
All right. Jaron, I know you just talked, but I'm going to need you to take another deep breath. I'm going to need you to go to your next game as we reverse to this.
That's fine. Yeah, we can boomerang this. So the next one is going to be an Image Comics. It's a group called Youngblood. And so obviously for, a brief backstory, Youngblood, the Youngblood team, rather, Image Comics was formed by a former artist for Marvel Comics and DC Comics. They wanted to own their own creations. So that's Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, et cetera, et cetera. So they formed Image Comics, and of course they had to launch all their books. So Youngblood was one of them, and Youngblood also led into groups with Brigade and Ram and Supreme, which we'll come back to that later. But yes, so Youngblood is essentially I don't want to call them the Avengers because they're nowhere near that noble. I don't know
what about X-Force?
Yeah, I would say kind of like a knockoff X-Force. Okay. They're like the Dr. Thunder to the Dr. Pepper.
So, they kind of remind me of Suicide Squad though too, a little bit.
Yes, because they're not. X-Force at least is somewhat good guys. These guys they don't hesitate to kill, if they have to. And a lot of the characters on there, the characters in there are pretty, cruel. They fight crime and evil, but they're also, I mean, they're treated like celebrities, so obviously there's going to be room for corruption or ego. So it's like a mixture of X-Force with the New Warriors, et cetera, et cetera. They're supposed to be a next gen of heroes, but I don't know. They always, whenever I read the books and the stories, they always came across like a-holes. So, but yeah, it actually had a number of significant members. Shaft, Sentinel, Badrock, Vogue, currently Suprema, the sister of Supreme is in it. But it had Chapel. There were a lot of members that came and went with that team. But the way I would see a lot of the gameplay if they were a game, it would be X-Force. Or not X-Force, I'm sorry, XCOM. It would be like XCOM.
Oh, XCOM? Okay.
Yeah, it would be strategy because XCOM, it relies on percentages, ratios. If you're at this level, you have a chance. At this level, if this soldier is having this problem or this soldier is attacked. So I think you could take that with Youngblood and take a lot of their personalities into the mix. And it would also allow you to have, since they have such a large roster of members, former and current members, you could also incorporate that. But you have, let's say you want to send Chapel in, but Chapel's a bit of a loose cannon, so he's less likely to do an overwatch or a guarding of a position. He's more likely to press on despite your orders. You might send in Suprema. She's going to be a powerhouse. but she may have her own weaknesses, or she may cause collateral damage because she's so powerful. So you have to weigh that when you're sending them out on a mission. And it wouldn't be just completely XCOM. It would also, since there's celebrities, they're in the public eye, you would also have maybe some simulation aspects of, you have to manage, like, each of your missions are going to be almost like a news report, or it's going to be like on ET. Entertainment Tonight, oh, Youngblood, blah blah blah, had a by the books mission.
That would be funny.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't have to go super serious with it. You can actually have a little fun with it. If you just completely bone a mission and barely pass it, it's like Youngblood, blah blah blah. Is there trouble in paradise? And each of the reviews, that would be kind of your mission review at the end. And of course, your performance determines how much public sway and maybe funding, and how much or how likely or how unlikely maybe the local military or police are to get involved, because it's like, oh crap, Youngblood, we better go in there. So I would definitely like to see them go with that, and with all the stories. And once again, like with Power Pack, you're part of a larger universe, so you could have cameos from Spawn, because Chaplin, Spawn have gone at it. You could have.
That's cool. I like Spawn.
Yeah, you could have cameo from Supreme. You could have cameo from crap. Who else? I'm trying to remember with all the different characters in Image Comics. You could have cameos from all sorts of individuals. I mean, hell, technically Wildstorm and Top Cow are part of Image, so maybe even have like Witchblade appear. I don't know. It really just depends on what you're wanting to do. So it would be fun. I just like the concept of jackass superheroes who are also public eye, but they have to be good, but they're not always that good.
So let me ask you this: would you want the permadeath in this game? So if one hero dies, he can't come back.
Unfortunately, well, actually, considering how Youngblood is, and I'm trying to remember, there was another team that actually dealt with, their heroes either dying or getting really hurt, and they bring them back. I think if you wanted to flex it a bit, you could have maybe not permadeath, but like premature retirement. Like they get hurt so bad, they're like, screw this, I'm out,
okay,
to hell with this team. And you have to pull in, another member, or recruit another member. So,
or they just can't be in the next battle.
Yeah, I mean, they not only not in the next battle, like they're gone for a good while, like maybe several missions until you lure them back. Like your team's performance or your team is getting such great reviews, it's like, oh crap, I want a part of that again. So it not necessarily permadeath, but the next best thing, which is perma quit, perma fired.
This. Oh yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Like, you're a loose cannon. You're off the team. So
okay.
I could see that, because I mean, that's the thing with comic properties. You can't do the same thing with like original characters. You can't kill people off willy-nilly like you would other properties. But I think a way around that would be a job system, or perma quit, or perma fired.
Okay. Nate?
I honestly, just to be real, I know very little about Youngblood, mainly just not because I never read it. It's just one of those things, when you're in a comic shop, you see it all the time, because those weren't hard to come by. Image Comics really changed the forefront of comics in the 90s, producing millions of copies of a lot of their early books. That's why Spawn, it's great, Spawn, he's like the forefront of Image. It's not really that valuable to have an entire Spawn run, because there were so many produced, So Youngblood was one I never really got to. The little bit of research I did leading up to this, like I said, the team very much gives me like the Suicide Squad feel. You have a lot of guys who are on their own trajectory, regardless of quote unquote good guy, bad guy. The permadeath thing, thinking about it, really the first clever thought I had was, you could have people permanently die, sure, and that's one of the fun things of the game. Could be like, well, you just lost your heavy, time to go recruit. Now we've got to find somebody who's like X, we got to get him replaced. And maybe you get a guy for a mission and he sucks so bad that you don't win. And you're like, well, he was not the right recruit. Okay, we got to go back to the drawing board. That would make, again, for something that you don't really get a lot in video games that could be really unique to the comic book domain, for sure.
No, I agree. And adding to that, Youngblood, there's another team called Bloodstrike, and they're more like X-Force, and characters like a character named Foreplay who has 4 arms. She has 4 arms, and a guy named Deadlock who looks like if Wolverine had a red and white costume scheme. Basically, like his actual costume scheme is the hair, the spikes up, or I can't remember what they're called, but it goes from the eyes and it goes up like Wolverine's classic costume, but it's red and white. So you like you're saying, some permadeath, some characters could die. You may have to recruit from other teams. Yeah, you may have to recruit other teams like Bloodstrike or Bloodpool, or man, you could tell Image was like super, edgy, 90s edgy. Bloodstrike, Bloodpool, Brigade. Yeah, so I agree with you. You have to go recruit and you have to try out new talent. Instead of recruiting, it's like tryouts. And you try it out for a mission.
That'd be funny.
Yeah, you try them out for a mission and it's like, oh man, this guy sucks. All right, well, whatever, we got to deal with it. So yeah, that's as far as developer. I mean, while I would like to see the developers of XCOM take this on, I actually would be interested to see. God, I'm rolling the dice here, but maybe Sega.
Wow, you are daring.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, the Shining Force, huh? Anything else?
That's it. Like, I'd like to see Sega. It's rolling dice.
It's almost like there is a sure bet, I think, but the problem is Nintendo would never do it, and I would let Intelligent Games do it. From Fire Emblem to Advance Wars. Like, I think they can do it, but there's no way in hell they're going to touch that. Like, they're just not going to touch it.
Yeah, they're like, why would we do that when
they don't do bloody games?
Yeah, I mean, especially something with the attitude like that. Oh, Camelot Software, the people who did Golden Sun.
Yeah, but aren't they under Nintendo also?
Oh yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Actually, no. Their parent. Their parent was Sega.
Oh, okay.
They partnered with Nintendo, like they did, Mario Tennis and golf and stuff like that. But
you're almost at the point where you would get the people that did Halo Wars or something, or people that did even Blizzard. I mean, with Diablo. I mean, they could probably do something with that.
Yeah. Oh God, I'm kind of reluctant to trust Blizzard with anything right now. Ensemble Studios, they did Halo Wars. Okay. But yeah, I'd probably go with Ensemble over Camelot as far as realistically happening, because Camelot has been in Nintendo's pocket for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So I'd probably go with Ensemble Studios. Hey, Microsoft, another cool game to bring into your stable. Just say it,
It's funny that no developers have, or studios like Sony or Microsoft have bought like all the rights to like a certain comic, like, publishing company. Like, we own all the Image. So anything Image, we make a game out of it. It's ours. Or, or Marvel or DC in that kind of sort of way. Because, like, didn't Marvel just announce that they just bought the rights for Aliens and Predator or something like that recently?
Dark Horse. Yeah, the Dark Horse comic properties.
Yeah.
Through acquisition of Disney acquiring stuff, they got it, yeah.
That's insane. Look. That's insane. And so,
I mean, Avengers versus Aliens.
Why not?
I'd read it. I mean, hey, we do they did zombies. Hell, let's do friggin' Spider-Man versus Predator.
Sure. I mean, it'll make money. So let's go to my game where I take you back to the 1950s, where the good old days, where we had the old school way of, the guy in the great suit going to work while, the homemaker is at the home with the, with the kid cleaning up. She goes shopping, all this stuff. And one thing is funny thing though is I like the era of the 1950s, more of the look of it. Not so much what's going on in the 1950s, but I like the old like structure. Like this used to be like, you know, stuff that you always saw when you were little, like, you know, the Dick Van Dyke Show, Bewitched, you know, it's these happy-go-lucky people like, I'm going to work, see you later, ha ha ha, you know, all that kind of stuff. But this one here is interesting is because I want to do something a little bit different and kind of out of place for this episode. So I picked Ladykillers. And Ladykiller is basically a story about Josie Schaller. And she has to balance a life between being a homemaker and an assassin or a contract killer or hitman, whatever you want to call it.
Huh.
And she's merging both of those, which is kind of interesting because you see her as this kind of brunette, black hair woman, this happy-go-mother thing. And then, like, she's over at this woman's house and she, you know, you got the old school, like, ladies that have, like, all the hair rolled up in the little, like, you know, little pins.
The behind.
Like that. Yeah, all that. And then she just gets, like, you know, the whole Kill Bill, death in the kitchen, blood on the ground. Like, she's using, like, you know, something that she found around. And it kind of drew my curiosity of, I always like those stories about people having the double life where they have to balance their other life that doesn't merge with the other one. And I would like that to be for this game where here's this happy mother. Everybody knows her. She's the nicest person. But on the side, she's like a, you know, an assassin. She's a killer. And I think what I want the game to be is probably what everybody's thinking of, the Hitman style. It should be like a Hitman game. With Square Enix. Hell, the people that didn't are now part of it, I think is IO. Let me look here.
IO Interactive?
Yeah. I mean, they're the perfect people to do it right now for that. And what I like about it is that when I was looking at research about Hitman, it's really simple. And it'd be kind of cool to see you adapt in this town in that time. But how challenging would it be to be an assassin at that time? And the way I would do that is anything could be a weapon. That's what I want it to be. So if you're going in this house to kill this woman and you have to kind of like, you know, be smooth about it, talk to her and everything like that, I want it to be option where, how do I want to kill her? Do I want to grab the toaster? Do I want to grab the coffee pot? Do I want to go open the refrigerator and grab something in there and use it? Like, anything is a weapon. And I think that will make it where it stands out. You know, or either like tell her, hey, go outside or something like that, and you can hit her with a car. I don't care. I just want it to be like, there's a lot of options with that. And to the point where some assassins, I mean, something she has to do, like, for instance, like she had to go to this, like, I guess, a strip bar or something like that, or a place where entertainment women do for guys, and she dresses up just to go kill this guy. And so that'd be interesting to see where that goes. But the thing about this comic too is it reverses later, where her employer doesn't trust that she can keep doing what she's doing and stay as a homemaker, you know, hiding her identity from her husband and her kid, which I want that to be a challenge too. Like, you have to work on that to make sure they don't know, or you could tell them and see what happens. But in the comic, they don't think you can do the job, so they send people out to kill you. So that changes the game around a little bit. So now you have to think of how to get out of the situation of someone killing you, but also you got to kill them too. And so that becomes that Mr. and Mrs. Smith kind of vibe there for a minute. And I just think it'd be kind of cool just to see the setting of the 1950s, because we don't get a lot of games that are set in the 1950s, especially a game where a woman is playing basically two lives, and we see that balance. So I think that'd be something interesting to me to play, because I never really play Hitman. But this one here, this would be really cool, because I just like the idea of, like, I just want to make anything a weapon and just see what creative idea I can do with this. So.
Okay.
I love that. I think that's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got that long kiss goodnight type vibe to it.
Great movie reference. Oh my God, yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Gina Davis and Samuel L. Jackson for the win.
Right. So is there anything you guys would see like added, or like is there anything you think it would be cool about it, or anybody else do you think could develop it?
One thing I think specifically with your ideas that I thought was very cool was the duality of keeping your secret identity from your family and how you do that with everything going on within the game. You know, do you accidentally leave evidence in your bathroom that lets them know that you're the Ladykiller, or, you know, or like you even said, how cool is it to be totally absolutely different and say, I'm going to just tell them right away what the hell I'm doing. You know, and then just get it out of the way, and then that's going to change the dynamic too, because now they know maybe they become targets of what you're fighting. Mm-hmm. Because they've been in the know of this. Maybe it puts your family in jeopardy, letting them know we're not.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that, because I don't know if it would work as like those would be like cutscenes like you would see like, Mass Effect or Telltale games where, you get choices and you have a time limit to hurry up and answer these questions as he's interrogating you. It's like, hey, I know it's blood on your dress. What's the story behind that? And you have choices to hurry up and make it quick. It's on the fly.
Oh yeah.
So I think that would be an awesome idea, especially like, I don't know why, I would love to have the situation like a mailman came by on one of your kills, so you have to kill him too, and just that thing where like stuff on top can kind of happen if you don't do it at the right time at the right place. You know what I mean? Like, do you do it at night, or do you do it in the daytime? What is the situation if you know this person? She was your neighbor and you have to kill her and you know her. So what's the best way to deal with that situation? So I think it would just be an awesome way to kind of find different choices to make. Also kind of alternates the ending of your game. Maybe you die.
Ooh.
Maybe you'll die. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe you'll lose your family,
Yeah.
They'll get killed, or your husband will take the kids or whatever and say, "Oh, I'm leaving," or "Get out," or whatever like that. And like Hitman, you could, maybe you have to kill the mailman. Maybe you find a way to cause his mail truck to explode, or you cut the brakes, or make it look like an accident.
Now, one last thing before I wrap mine up. I want to do this just for my pleasure. No one else has to agree with it. But I think I want it where your character, you have to really think of what the world's going to look at you as you go into this. And what I mean by that is, I think that Josie, you should make sure that you always try to change your wardrobe. So let's, for instance, like if you're wearing a pink dress and you got it washed and you're good and you go out, I want someone to call you out and say, wait a minute, didn't I see you wear that yesterday? Like I want it where you can kind of like, you need to change your stuff up, or people are going to notice some things. And maybe your husband finds out like, hey, I saw the other day wearing that dress here and here. Kind of keep yourself on the edge. That always changing, because most of the time in games you're doing something but you're still wearing the same outfit. And I was always wondering, like, I killed this guy in this outfit. Like, no one's gonna call me out on this. Like, come on, because police are gonna eventually get involved probably in this game. So if you keep your image up and changing outfits and changing the way you are, maybe that'd be kind of cool. But that's me personally. So that way, if I slip up, I'm like, damn, I knew I should have wore that blue dress the other day. And so,
and that actually gives me a credence and an idea for something that could take your game a little further too, and specifically a mission where she has to go to the supermarket to maybe take out a target or whatever, and the husband's there, and the whole mission is you making sure he never spots you.
Yeah, that's a good one. Like, yeah.
So it has like an element of stealth, but it's not really stealth because you're in a fucking supermarket. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's basically you're going on your life, and then it's like, oh crap, my hit is right in front of me.
What do I do? Duck into the newspapers. Okay.
Yeah. So that's my pick, Ladykillers. Nate, take us home, man, with your final pick.
Man, this is difficult because I told you my final pick, and you said something that made me second guess my final pick. Hey, how do you do and reinvent the wheel in something that has so many properties already in the video game world? We're talking about comics. I would be utterly remiss if I didn't talk about my all-time favorite series. I'm a big Spider-Man mark. I love Insomniac Games and everything, but I've never seen, as much as the Telltale games are fun, a Walking Dead game done right. And what I mean by right is when you read the Walking Dead books from issue 1 to 193, there is a certain tone, a certain vibe, a certain mood that is always prevalent and in your throat when you're reading these books. And I don't think a game has captured, obviously, Survival Instinct with the Dixons was a horrible disgrace of a joke of a game. The Telltale games are great and fun by their own right. They're not the Walking Dead that I connect with, though. It's not Rick Grimes. It doesn't have Michonne. It doesn't have Carl or Negan or the governor or any of those guys. That's what the game needs. And what I want is, again, very much literal interpretation. Let me relive these moments in video game form. Now, I said Insomniac Games, spoiler alert, I think they do a great job because they've shown they can take a property and be serious about it and give it real love and make you feel a part of that world. Specifically, a couple things I want. I do want this to have a Hitman vibe. I want it to have that third person over the shoulder feel, but I don't want it to just be told from Rick Grimes' perspective. I want you to be learning the story of Rick Grimes and going down his journey, and something triggers and you go back and have to play a level as Shane. And you experience what he was feeling in these moments and connect to him more. And then you flash forward and you have to play as Carl for a small mission where he's still a young boy and has to sneak. And, it's still ever evolving and telling this bigger narrative. The first game would end with Negan beating Rick's group to a pulp.
Oh, wow.
And that would be the cliffhanger of like, oh my God, my team lost. What do I do? Like, what do I? So then the next game you could set up, whether it be an extension of a game being just a DLC add-on or a smaller, mini release, kind of like the Spider-Man Miles Morales is going to be. You do all-out war. That's your next part of the chapter of the story. It's a big chunk of it. That way there's a lot of fighting, a lot of battle. You can do different kinds of gameplay with it. Negan's group versus Rick's group. Who's going to win? Once that game is over, the little extension game, the final game is literally from the time jump of The Walking Dead 127 to the end of the series. It's a perfect story. It tells itself. It wraps up beautifully. There's nothing more to be done, nothing more to be said. Insomniac Games doesn't get a hold of it. I want somebody like Naughty Dog, possibly. Even Sucker Punch, with how they are doing Ghost of Tsushima, automatically made me think of what? Oh my God, the one thing The Walking Dead has never successfully done in video game. Give it to me in black and white. I don't need to see it in color. I've read 193 issues in black and white. Let's just give it to me that way.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. No, that would be awesome, or at least an option.
That's all I've really got.
So this is something I said about Ghost of Tsushima. The perfect thing for me would be if it's in black and white, but I would still see red blood. Would you like to see that in The Walking Dead?
That would be amazing, and it would actually be really captivating, considering if you go through the books and read, there are a lot of big moments where characters die in different tragic forms or fashions that are very memorable, and the book doesn't have any actual color red blood, like you said, in it. It would make it just drive the point home a little bit more. The motion would be a little bit larger, Sure, the game's going to be rated M, and honestly, it might get that NC-17 rating we don't typically see, just with how gruesome the game would need to be to really captivate your comic book audiences who loved that story. Now, there are a ton of people that are going to go, well, I don't want to play it because it's not like the show. I don't want a game that's like the show. The show took away everything great about The Walking Dead and pick and chose some of the moments. I want all the moments. That's why I love that series so much.
So because of that, you probably don't want choice space. You really just wanted to stick with the narrative, so you have to deal with the situation that they had to deal with.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's live or die every time, And I think that it could be fun, kind of like the Youngblood game, where maybe Rick's group, if you're not a main character, you could die at any point as long as you don't have storyline involvement, like deeper plot storyline. So little offshoot ancillary characters that live in Alexandria, you might grow fond of and bond with somebody that you talk to in the town, but it also could come crashing down very quickly in the next mission. They die, and you're just like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. Now I have to figure out what I'm going to do. I love things like that where the unexpected can make of the elevation of drama in a game.
So how would you personally like to balance the drama among your group? Because I think there has to be probably some disagreements among your group compared to dealing with zombies. So how would you want to balance that out, in your opinion?
Maybe you take a little bit from the Mass Effect world and do give it some choice on like how you talk about your team and how you suggest things. Like, sure, I'm going to say I think it's a terrible fucking idea for us to go to the bridge to try to kill this horde of zombies. We're probably all going to die. And your character says that. And then maybe the team survives and now they throw pokes at you and you thought we couldn't do the bridge. You're hilarious. Like, you're... or vice versa. You're like, oh, no big deal. We can go do the bridge, no problem. And you get wiped out. And then you're like, oh, well, that was a terrible decision to say because I've led my team into the slaughter. Now I have to rethink my strategy. Even though I've said that, how do I still get through this situation that seems unbeatable?
I think, too, one of the challenges you should have is definitely limitations of your weapons. So not everybody's going to get a gun. Not everybody can have a gun.
Nope.
Maybe one person can only have a gun. But then you pick.
And also using a gun could be very bad for you because you could draw attention.
Noise. Yep, noise.
Yeah, so I think that it needs to be scarce of what weapons work in that situation. And maybe some skills that maybe go well with that. But definitely, like, it needs to be a tough call, your load up of what characters get what. And if they die, that's, you made a mistake of giving that person a weapon. Maybe that girl did not need to have that weapon. I don't know. And I think also a challenge would be how would you do with the kids? Because, there is some kids in there. Like, I think that would be the biggest challenge right there. Yeah.
Make them look at the
like
flowers.
You used to just... Oh, God. Thanks, Carol. You bitch.
Jaron? Go ahead. Go ahead, Nate.
No, Jaron should go ahead. I've talked enough.
No, I just think going back on what you're saying, consequences, dealing with kids, dealing with anybody, dealing with party dynamics. I think it would be great, like you're saying, you take on a particular task. Maybe it goes right, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it goes in the middle where, a couple of your folks were bit, and then you have to deal with, okay, well, crap, I really like this person. They were bit. Maybe I'll try and chop their hand off or wherever they were bit. Maybe try and salvage something. Maybe that'll work, or maybe, depending on who's with it, just out and out execute them. Say, screw it. I like the idea of being put into some hard decisions, being forced to make some hard decisions. Like I foresee your idea for this game being something that's going to require some significant emotional intelligence at some points.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Because
hey man, the dad of this family got bit and it's only his arm and we could amputate him, but we all know that it's probably already spread. Do we risk his kids? Do we risk the wife? There's bigger picture elements to think about. I do love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that, no two playthroughs, like you could be playing it, I could be playing it, Jeremy could be playing it. All three of our playthroughs are completely different. You go a more compassionate route. I try and cut through the middle, and Jeremy's completely ruthless. Like, he's bit, shoot him.
Yeah.
just kill him, and just or you may want to risk your doctor to go out, so they can take care of any wounds in the field, but that's also like your best doctor. So if someone gets injured or has a baby back at home, they can't really deliver it right.
I would on top of that, if you decide to let that person live after being being bitten and whatnot, I want them to turn to a zombie mid fight, and then
that would be awesome.
Now he joins the other team, and so you got to kill him. You know?
Or just do it unexpectedly. Like, it depends on where they got bit.
Yeah.
It could be during that fight. It could be in between missions, and then you got chaos at home or whatever. Yeah. It's. Okay. I want legitimate consequences for any and every action.
Okay. All right. Well, we are getting close to the end. We got to get ready to wrap this up. But we do have our third honorable mentions that we want to kind of just do a shout out to. I wish we had more time to do it, but, these were great picks that we have. So I'll go ahead and get mine first out of the way. One of my comic picks was Black Science. It was a science fiction story about a group of people that made a device that kept zapping them to different parts of the universe in different dimensions. And I basically wanted to be where it's just about this group, and you're just trying to get to the end. Whoever survives, survives. That's it. And it'll be like more of a shooting game. But it was you and your team. If that kid dies in that dimension, that kid's dead. That character's dead. I think that'll just be fun just to see how far you would go with, I want to say, kind of like a mixture of each dimension is always different. So you're not always going through the same thing again when you do a replay. So that's it. So, Nate, what about you?
Awesome. For me, I picked something that's kind of in the popular ether right now. The Netflix series Umbrella Academy's hot. But because of that series and how much I enjoyed watching it, it made me actually go find and search out the comics, which I also love. And I just thought, man, how fun would it be to be a team of 6 or 7 kids with vastly different powers, similar to what we've talked about here, Power Pack and Young Bloods and whatnot. Young Bloods. How fun would it be to have their specific power set in that very specific universe that's not a Marvel, it's not a DC or an Image, it's its own pocket thing, and play by their rules and experience. Again, one thing I think I really want from a game is more diversity as you play. I don't want to just play as I'm the main character of this game and that's the only narrative I see. I want to have a couple levels where I play another guy who his story attributes to the overall narrative, and you see more now why when you have to get to this tough decision with your brother or your sibling who's a member of the Umbrella Academy, how are you gonna react? You could do a lot more RPG related stuff where it is decision making, and it could change and fracture the universe. There's a very vast open identity to the Umbrella Academy, so that's my honorary mention.
Okay, Jaron, take it home, bud.
All right. Well, we're going back to the world of Image with Supreme. Essentially, think of Superman, but without all that the shackles of strict morality. Like, think of a chaotic good to a lawful neutral Superman instead of lawful good.
Okay.
You know, he will jack you up if he has to, and I see that. Considering how brutal he could be, I would want it to just be a straight brutal beat 'em up. Just a straight brutal beat 'em up. Yeah, you're Supreme. If you want to make it multiplayer, you can have Supreme and Suprema. You know, 2-player beat 'em up, but instead of just punch, combo, and they're knocked down, body parts are flying off. Powers are being used. People are being brutalized in various ways. And I think that would be, it wouldn't even have to be a full game. It could be like a little $39.99, independent game with like a graphic style similar to Streets of Rage 4. But, body parts are flying. You rip off a guy's arm and beat him with it. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see just a brutal Supreme.
Jesus Christ.
Yes. We're doing all immature games.
It reminds me of Mad World. On the Wii.
Oh yeah,
that's a great game, Mad World. Oh yeah,
dude, it's coming on his. I talked about in the last episode. It's on his, I think, 10-year anniversary. I would love a remake, a remastered. Come
for the Switch.
Yeah.
Yup.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah. But with that, I want to thank everybody for listening to this jam-packed show as part of the In-Game Boss program, a network of game and other variety shows. So definitely check out all our other great shows on part of this network that you can find on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. All our great spots. They're in the description for links for you. But also, to remember, we are on Facebook and Twitter. Just type in the In-Game Boss program, or on Twitter, program in. And, welcome to just listen to all our great stuff. We're also on YouTube also. We have great shows on there. Jaron and I do a show on there called The Cabinet Sessions, where we go through over a bunch of arcade games and just, have a good time going through them. We have a lot on our plate, so definitely come by and take a look at that. And I do another one with my buddy Jaron that I helped him get a Switch recently for a really good deal, $250. Shout out to him. And he's getting Smash Brothers. And we do a show called Buddy Up Gaming, and we just pick a bunch of games that are co-op, and we just go through them. We're just put in where we fit in. So definitely check out our stuff. But before we definitely go, you got to talk about Nate here. Nate, where can they find you, man? Give them your whole repertoire.
As always, you guys can check out the Journey into Comics network at journeyintocomics.com. Get us on Apple Music, Podbean, Stitcher Radio, Google Play Music, which is now Google Podcast, Spotify, CastBox, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, I think, and many others. Just search Journey into Comics Network. Our one feed is jam-packed, and there's definitely something for everybody. Just go through the catalog and find something you'll love. I will mention, it is very important, if you don't necessarily find something just by scrolling and it seems very cumbersome, go to our .com where our archives are. You can literally go through, click Journey into Comics 01, listen all the way back to 2014 in my inception days, or listen to episode 100, or listen to 300, however, wherever, whenever. You have a large catalog of over 1,100 podcasts on our network to listen to. So please, I implore you, go check us out.
And they can find you also on Facebook and Twitter, right?
Oh, yeah. We've got socials for pretty much every different show as well. So if one show tickles your fancy, you'll be able to find them on pretty much any platform. Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
All right. And if you want to find us personally, you can find me on Twitter as RetroAmp07.
And I am on Twitter as the Grumpy Bear 84.
And Nate, do you have a personal Twitter one?
I haven't used my personal Twitter in so long, I don't know it. I mainly just do the bands and then all the podcasts.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they can link you to that too. And so, but I want to thank everybody for listening to this. Nate, thank you so much for making the time to come be a guest on our show and talk about your network and just enjoy comic book talk with us.
Hell yeah,
Thank you guys so much for having me. It has been an absolute blast. Like I said, it's not often that I guest on shows outside of our network, so to be invited on was an honor, and then to have this amazing conversation with you guys has been a blast. I've really enjoyed myself. Thank you guys so much.
No problem. And for you listeners, we will catch you on our next stage. Stage clear. Let's go.
New high score.